This week's Parsha begins with instructions for the ritual of lighting the 7 lights of the menorah in the tabernacle. The verb describing the actual act of lighting is baha'alotecha, which we can translate as to lift, to ascend, to raise up. The opening verse reads, "When you light up the lamps, let the 7 lamps give light at the front of the lampstand." I think most of us would refer to the lighting of candles as lahadlik ner, like we did at the start of the service, to kindle lights of the Shabbat or holidays. But why in this Torah portion do we raise up the lamps? Well, for one, if I were to light the menorah in Stern Chapel, I would need to ascend a ladder. Ascending to the light describes the work of raising oneself up to reach the lamps of the menorah. The specific language in our Torah portion is a reminder that the details and the logistics and the ladders and the building blocks of our work that we all do can be holy. It can help us flourish and function. We need ladders to climb, and matches set on the tables, and teams of priests and poets and singers and healers. And tonight we offer our particular thanks to those who were involved in our temple votes and other nonpartisan civic engagement opportunities. We need tables set with voter registration information and volunteers to speak in classrooms about the importance of civic engagement. We need countless advocates and poll workers to ensure free and fair and accessible national, state, and local elections. Living out our Jewish values is always embedded in logistics, with each of us tasked to lift the light through everyday sacred undertakings. The lift to ensure free and fair and safe and accessible elections is getting heavier and heavier with each passing election cycle. The underfunding of our electoral system is a threat to the fabric of our society. I have learned through our partnership with an amazing organization, A More Perfect Union, that the Election Infrastructure Initiative has estimated that our election funding will need to be at least $53 billion over 10 years to provide local election offices with the resources that they need to conduct safe and voter-centric elections. And in Texas alone, modernizing our infrastructure will cost roughly $3 billion over 10 years for cybersecurity improvements and maintenance, to replace outdated voting machines and election administration and operations. An overwhelming majority of Americans recognize the need for better funding. 80% of registered voters support $2 billion annual investment to upgrade our voting infrastructure. Recently, our Temple Votes team has been actively involved in advocating for consolidated elections in November, which would save dollars and increase voter turnout. Our very own Jeff Kittner, who I don't think is here tonight. Hi, Jeff, if you're joining online. Our Temple member, Chief Operating Officer at the North Dallas Chamber of Commerce, and a co-chair of Temple Votes, wrote a powerful Dallas Morning News op-ed. He said, "Lower voter turnout in May elections is not due to a lack of effort within the civic community. Groups such as the North Dallas Chamber of Commerce and the League of Women Voters of Dallas host multiple candidate forums and engage in extensive voting promotion. Counties make voting easy by offering lengthy windows for early voting and allow voters to make their selections at any voting center. But despite these outreach efforts and the ease of voting, voter turnout in May elections remains dismal. There is a perception in the community that there are too many elections. When Dallas voters show up, it's usually in November." So this Wednesday, the Dallas City Council will be discussing whether to include for voter consideration an amendment to move municipal elections from May in low turnout in odd years to higher turnout November in odd years. And if you don't remember all this, don't worry. There is information that we can share with you, because next week we are all encouraged to contact our elected officials, council members, the mayor, and ask them to support the inclusion of this amendment on our ballot. So we have work to do. We have lights to lift, locally and nationally. And if you haven't already, I invite you to become more engaged in temple votes and other nonpartisan efforts, and check out a More Perfect Union website. And you can be in touch with Jeff or Freda or Erica or me if you have any questions. The light of the menorah was lit regularly with an investment of resource and time and logistical discipline. However, we know that the language of Bahalotecha reflects something in addition to logistics, as we aspire to make our spiritual lives expand beyond nuts and bolts and wicks and matches and voting cards and stickers. As we say in Psalm 18, "It is you who light up my light, the Lord who lights up my darkness." The power of prayers and rituals, lighting the menorah lamps, caring for those in need, studying Torah, driving someone to the polling station, all this and so much more are reminders of our partnership with God, who can illuminate our days. A year ago, I found myself amid the ebb and flow of chemo. And I am so very grateful to be in remission, and I pray that I will be for many years to come. I remember last June, with clear brushstrokes of memory, the blanket of heavy fatigue, the notes of encouragement, the sense of welcome, and the beauty of marking Shabbat each week online and in person. I made my way through a desert of treatment and tests and medical worry that I know many of you and your loved ones have traversed or are traversing. As the exhaustion left my spirit parched, each week of Torah turning brought a new lens through which to discover meaning. As the Israelites once walked narrow paths of despair and set out to expansive horizons of hope, I felt myself doing the same, with our ancestors and their wisdom accompanying me. And I believe this is the gift of Torah that can steady us and lift us up. This year, I see this week's Parsha through the prism of fresh grief after the unfolding war in Israel and after my father's passing in March. We collectively and individually have experienced another dimension of the darkness of pain, as well as the light of steady love. I have new appreciation of what it must have been like for our ancestors to discover the light of such rituals and the wisdom of Torah. We know that there were moments when those Israelites looked back longingly on the past before they met the desert expanse, and yet time and time again, they learned that if they kept working toward a greater good, if they kept trying to cultivate a steady faith, if they kept believing that the light of hope can pierce through the darkest of days, it is possible to not only survive, but to thrive. So may we too be lifted up and discover renewed courage. Lifted up when we bring our children to the local polling station and they carefully help mark each page, for it's so much more than checking boxes. Voting is a sacred act that taps into our yearning for a world made whole. It is one way that we connect to a long line of leaders and everyday people who fought vigorously for our freedom. May we too be lifted up as the pillar of cloud and fire manifested each day and night as God led those people through the wilderness. May we be lifted up like the flames dancing on the lamps of the menorah. Shabbat Shalom.